reminds our listeners that the views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the host and guests and not necessarily the opinions of the owners of Global Communications Network and the operators of this radio station.
Today can be the turning point in your life by making a simple decision.
Fundamental questions of navigation. Where am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there from here?
I invite the leaders of our planet to ask themselves these three questions before they make any crucial decisions.
But if you don't make decisions, you're going to stay right where you are.
We are all map makers.
We are in a time of transition.
If we're going to change, we have to change the direction that we're going.
Our planet needs leaders who know where they want to go.
When we change the direction we're going, then we want to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Leaders who can see the big picture.
Because if we're not, we're going to either go backwards or we're going to stay where we are.
Recognizing the psychological and the spiritual shifts and changes that need to be made, often from the inside to the outside.
To be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm.
Complex journeys require navigation. The path to the truth is one such journey. This is your GPS. Hairstyling services provided by J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Madera Street. Accessories provided by Chevette Williamson Jewelry. Standout jewelry for standout women.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift, on Global 99.5 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm. As always, it's a pleasure to be in your company. Thank you so much for tuning in today. So I want to begin, before I dive into today's topic, I want to begin by issuing an apology to my listeners and viewers. I sort of lost my cool at the end of my show yesterday. We were talking, if you tuned in, about a very serious issue about gender-based violence. And one of my viewers on Facebook decided to put a comment there that I thought was kind of trivializing the seriousness of what we were discussing. And I got a little hot under the collar and said some things I should not have said, I guess, as someone who represents the kingdom. I did not behave like a kingdom citizen yesterday in my annoyance at that particular viewer. I am a flawed human being. Never told anybody I was perfect. And I am big enough to apologize when I have done wrong. And I want to say my apologies, like I said, to my audience for losing my cool yesterday. Ironically, somebody sent me a news clipping today with Will Smith issuing an apology directly to Chris Rock because, in his acceptance speech, he didn't apologize to Chris. He apologized to the Academy and to his fellow nominees, but he didn't say sorry to Chris. But I guess now that he's facing or possibly facing some serious backlash for his actions at the Academy Awards. And he issued an apology to Chris, saying that his behavior was unacceptable and inexcusable. He said, "Jokes at my expense are a part of the job, but a joke about Jada's medical condition was too much for me to bear, and I reacted emotionally," he wrote. "I would like to publicly apologize to you, Chris. I was out of line, and I was wrong. I'm embarrassed by my actions, and my actions were not indicative of the man I want to be. There's no place for violence in a world of love and kindness." I say, wow, that's interesting. Because it's really easy for us everybody's been weighing in on this whole controversy as it relates to Will Smith's actions and et cetera. But as he said at the end of his apology, I am a work in progress, and I can relate. I slapped nobody yesterday, but I can't promise you that if that particular viewer was standing in front of me, I wouldn't slap him. That's how angry I was at the trivial comment that he put in there when we were discussing such a very serious issue. So I do apologize to my listeners and viewers, and will do my best not to allow myself to become that angry again at something that someone, says. But I do want to encourage you people. I'm not just doing this show because I don't have anything else to do. I would like to believe that what we're doing here is making a difference. That we're not just talking to hear each other talk, but that we are opening up a dialogue that will make a difference in all of our lives. If we would just open our minds to be a part of sensible adult conversation. And I want to encourage you, if you are a listener or viewer of the show, to approach it in that way. This is not a game. And especially when we're discussing something so serious, don't come with no stupidity, man, because, ain't nobody into that. We're trying to make a difference here, trying to open up our minds to look at things from a different perspective, to shift our paradigm where needed so that we can make our community a better place. And like Will Smith, I too am embarrassed at my behavior yesterday. Somebody actually sent me a message saying, "Oh my God, Michelle, you shocked me." I say, "Yeah, it shocked me too." So that's done. Let's move on. I promised you guys yesterday that I would be talking about carbon credits today because someone reached out, I think was one of my former past shows, saying, could I answer some questions on carbon credits? And at that point I couldn't because I didn't know sufficiently about it to discuss it. And so I promised that I would get somebody on here who does know quite a lot a bit about this. And I also did some research in preparation for today's show and learned quite a bit. This whole carbon credits thing is very, very fascinating, very interesting, especially when it's being abused. And yes, we're going to learn about that during this conversation today. So before I bring in my guest, I'm going to go to my first clip because this clip is going to explain what are carbon credits. That would be clip number one.
Most of our debt, and we are heavily indebted, but I dare say that at least 50% of our debt is directly related to the consequences of climate change, with hurricanes and the disruption in our economy when we do have hurricanes, and when we have property damage over the last 5 or 6 years in the billions, $4 or $5 billion. So we can see the challenge that we have.
So that was actually our Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Davis, talking about the conversation that he recently had with the Duke of Cambridge about the message that he would like him to take back. And that is how climate change is negatively impacting us, even though we're not one of the major contributors to the problem, but yet we are suffering the most as a low-lying state. And you heard him say that more than half of our deficit is on account of disasters that were beyond our control, that many believe have a direct relationship to climate change. And so this whole question of carbon credits really has a huge impact on us as Bahamians, because imagine if our national debt were cut in half because we weren't facing all of these devastating natural disasters. So now we're going to go to that clip that is going to explain what are carbon credits, and then I'm going to bring on my guest.
Let us break down for you how this all works. Every time an organization uses a resource that relies on burning fossil fuels, it creates carbon emissions, also known as a carbon footprint. Everybody has a carbon footprint. But when these emissions enter the atmosphere, they accelerate climate change, bringing, among other things, more extreme weather. Thankfully, the plummeting costs of low-carbon technologies and more resource-efficient practices mean that many organizations are reducing their footprints, becoming more resilient, and saving on energy expenditure. But reducing emissions is challenging, something that doesn't happen overnight. And with our present systems of energy and land use, preventing any carbon dioxide emissions is not currently possible for most organizations. This is where carbon credits come in. Buying carbon credits compensates for the unavoidable emissions you create today by financing projects that reduce or absorb carbon emissions anywhere in the world. Carbon credits increase the health and prosperity of communities around the world and combat climate change by financing projects that reduce the need to burn fossil fuels or draw greenhouse gases directly out of the air. Accreditations from internationally recognized standards give you the assurance that the projects producing your credits deliver the positive environmental and social impacts they set out to achieve. Moreover, your credits help finance projects that would not otherwise happen. So as well as offsetting your emissions, you are also supporting more sustainable forms of growth. How good is that?
All right, so that gives you a little bit of an idea of what are carbon credits, and I am now going to bring in our guest, C. Alan Johnson. Welcome, C. Alan, to GPS once again, who will break this down even further for us to help us to understand carbon credits and how it relates to what we in the Bahamas can do to improve our financial standing for one, and our overall well-being as it relates to the lessening of the damage being done to the planet that is leading to climate change. Welcome to the show, C. Alan.
Thank you once again, Michelle, for having me, and good afternoon to the wider Bahamas and all of those listening around the world.
Okay, so you heard the clip that sort of gave us a snapshot view of what are carbon credits. Now break that down for us in terms of how that relates to us here in the Bahamas.
Okay, carbon credits is a form of currency that allows you to emit a certain amount of carbon per capita, per country, per industry, etc. And oftentimes, I want you to pay close attention to this, because oftentimes people use interchangeably carbon credits and carbon offsets. Carbon offsets.
Yeah, I did find some information about offsets as well as credits. So definitely we need to break that down. So let's deal with credits first.
Right. And so carbon credits gives you an allocated amount of from a global standard of what each country is allowed to produce, and even what industry is based on that country's score. And essentially everything we do actually emits some form of carbon dioxide into the air. That includes turning on your light switch, cooking, driving, the things you consume, the transportation to get it there, the vehicles that actually get the stuff to there. You have it's almost impossible not to have a carbon footprint in this world today, because even the clothes you wear has some form of carbon footprint, because it was used to make the clothing in the factory or whatever it is that you have, the cars you drive. In fact, even the e-cars, electric cars, also have a carbon footprint. Essentially, what they argue when you go to e-cars and etc. is that over the term of that particular item, it's carbon negative. And that's the argument, which is still debatable because we haven't had that much into the return into the circular economy to basically gauge the true effectiveness that these vehicles will have, because we have to do some recycling, etc. on it. And so let's say a country, and let's use, for instance, the Prime Minister said, a country emits a certain amount of carbon. And essentially they have these carbon credits. And they say, let's say they say C. Alan Johnson is allowed to emit 1,000 tons of carbon, of carbon. Essentially, once I reach that quota of 1,000 for C. Alan Johnson, I am now subject to being fined or paying a fee for exceeding my allotted quota. So essentially, what I could do is I can find someone who has not used their carbon credits, and I can buy their carbon credits from them. And like let's say you Michelle, you have the same 1 million quota, but you're only using 700,000. I can come to you and buy those 300,000 credits that you didn't use and utilize them and say, look, I didn't exceed by 250. In fact, I break even because I bought 250,000 credits from Michelle. And essentially, it's basically a scorecard of what you emit and what you can use to offset. And so countries like ours, like the Bahamas, even though we are a highly carbon-based economy, we basically, as we develop this conversation, you'll see that we are carbon negative, but we could enhance even more. What the Prime Minister spoke about is the impact of global warming and climate change that comes from these industrialized countries like China, the United States, Germany, Russia, and other places that burn coal and other carbon-based fuels for their production cycle, and they emitting millions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere, more than current technology has been able to absorb. And hopefully that gives you some of it.
So how is this whole system managed in terms of, and I have a clip that's going to talk to it, but I want you to break it down for us. So I can't just jump up today and say, okay, I'm the Bahamas and I have all these carbon credits I want to sell. So how is it, how is the whole system managed? Are there markets where these credits are traded?
Yes, there is a number of markets, and it's been standardized as we speak. So whatever the Bahamas, and this is where the blending of carbon credits and carbon offsets begin to blend. But the Bahamas has a certain amount of allocation. We could look at what we are not using and look to sell what was allocated to us on the open market to for a certain amount of tons based on the tonnage of we didn't use, and get monies for those particular things. The argument that is now being made is that the Prime Minister, our current Prime Minister, Mr. Brave Davis, is making is that countries like the small developing islands like ourselves are now beginning to make the argument that we are negatively impacted by those overproduction of carbon dioxide by these industrialized countries. And as such, because of the impact on the weather, more specifically on our environment, that affects us negatively, costing us in the billions of dollars worth of damage, that those countries should compensate us for the damage that they have done to the environment with exceeding their allocated amount of carbon.
Okay, so which countries because it's not just one standardized market, correct?
No, there isn't. There's a number of markets, and this is where the United Nations and others are trying to harmonize what the carbon credit market, though it's 2 decades old, has never been pure in its measurement of what carbon credits are, or how to measure carbon offsets, or exactly what are you emitting, how you're emitting it. And then you have countries that also cheat. So you have, if a country is not being honest and the number of carbon they're producing, right? What their factories are producing or whatever else, it could be that they are producing exceedingly more than they even admit to. And so essentially, we are now, the second part of this argument, this is where the maturity as global warming and climate change becomes more front and center. This is where countries who are negatively impacted are now demanding from the industrial nations. Essentially, the argument is that, look, we allocated you 10 billion tons of carbon. You produce 20 billion. This is what it costs to clean it up. You should create a fund that countries like ourselves who are impacted negatively by it can reach into it, while setting international goals to get you in line with the reduction of carbon dioxide production that is going on right now.
So what is it that the Bahamas has that qualifies us to be a good trader of carbon credits? What are some of the natural resources that we have that make us qualify for that?
The major natural resources that we have is our ocean. That's the number one. In fact, a lot of people may not realize that the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide than the actual all the trees on the planet. And essentially, when you, in fact, we're going to come to that, the second part of that is the carbon dioxide that is absorbed in the Bahamian waters is often referred to as part of a combination of something called aragonite and other things that we exist. The next thing that we have is our coppice, and the coppice is the trees and plants that we have around. We have one of the most matured set of coppice in this Western Hemisphere based on our size and our geographical location. The other part of that is something called seagrass. Seagrass is also a carbon absorber in what it does. So you have the aragonite, you have the ocean, you have the what I just said. Let me see. I said the seagrass. Oh, lost my train of thought just now.
Trees. You said the trees, the ocean.
The trees, the ocean, and the next thing is the thing in the water, the mangroves. Sorry, the mangroves is not another major that absorbs carbon in the Bahamas. And so essentially, when you look at these carbon type of environment, we are negative because we have our oceans absorbing carbon, which we may call carbon, we may call aragonite. And it's a form of aragonite that we have and it reduces. We have our coppice. We have the grass, the seagrass. We have the mangroves, and what else? That's the ocean, the mangroves, the seagrass, and the mangroves and the coppice. That's 4 or 5. But those are they are major players in the absorption of carbon dioxide. Now, if you look at the fact that these things absorb billions of tons of carbon credits per year, nowhere close, in spite of our overconsumption, in my view, of carbon, nowhere close to the amount that we consume. So we are carbon negative in our production, which then also, separate and apart from the damages that's being asked by the Right Honorable Brave Davis, is our ability to basically sell the carbon credits that we are not using. And secondly, we'll come to these absorption things, which is known as carbon offsets that we have. So we have 3 means of deriving revenue from carbon credits marketplace. One, for the carbon we don't produce. Second is for the carbon offsets that we do manufacture. And thirdly, we can ask for damages that come from these these developing nations, as well as these first world nations, that produces an abundance of carbon that we are now beginning to learn is responsible for the impact of global warming and climate change. So that's 3 major avenues
now,
that we can explore.
Yeah, I've heard some critics who, whenever you talk about this, they say things like, well, it's not as easy as it sounds, Alan, because how do you measure the carbon credits that we have? Like there's been nothing done to actually go and gather information as to what the amount that we really have. How do you respond to that?
Well, this is not rocket science, because we know our consumption, and we are a carbon-based environment. In fact, the government derives most of its revenue from a carbon-based consumption model. And so we just have to look at our consumption of carbon. But oftentimes we suffer from the arrogance of our ignorance concerning our size, leading to what is called this whole paralysis of analysis, or paralysis from analysis. But this is not some major task of this major island. Most of our industry in the Bahamas occurs on Grand Bahama and New Providence. So we can measure what comes in and what comes out. Essentially, it is basically look at what you consume. Look at what you send to the garbage, to the dump. Look at the amount of gas and things that you import into the country. We don't produce any of these things, so it's very easy for us to see our carbon footprint. What may be slightly challenging is us actually measuring the amount of carbon offsets that we produce. That's where we have to begin to work at. But finding out actual consumption is very easy. I think with the matter of maybe a few weeks or months, we can absolutely know what it is in real time by putting it in a data aggregator and recognize it in real time, the amount of carbon we consume. Then we just looked at what is allocated to us, and we can sell the difference between those two. Now we are going to say, okay, now the conversation then becomes the compensation, and this is what the world is discussing that you saw at COP26 concerning setting up this this fund that we could make application to for what we consider damages done to us. The next part of that is the carbon offset, because we have to now, we have an idea from Google Earth and other satellites concerning the amount of coppice that we have, how much of it was destroyed from various hurricanes, how much of it was regenerated. The BNT, the Nature Conservatory, and others have measurements of the mangroves and the seagrass and other things that we have. If we don't, we can very easily begin to measure those different things. The argument we may also have is how much carbon, how much aragonite that we actually produce. If people begin to look at aragonite, you will see that the major component of aragonite is carbon dioxide, and is the carbon that we're trying to do. And this is why oftentimes you hear me argue with them, and you have the pundits who talk about digging up and exploiting aragonite, that we have a need that regardless of what we do today, the Bahamas will be suffering a catastrophic tidal rise, and we have enough aragonite to begin to lift our islands and begin to preserve ourselves, as well as one of the most powerful things that we can do is that we can actually create artificial islands on the border of our economic zones and extend our ocean reach by dozens, if not hundreds, if not eventually by thousands of square miles, which then give us more ability to lay claim to the absorption or creation of carbon offsets. And so I mean, literally speaking, I heard the Prime Minister spoke about the, let's say, $5 billion worth of debt. I could say, literally speaking, forget the mismanagement or whatever we could have done over the years and overpaying and fraud and everything else. If you look at the fact that the damages that we suffer from Dorian alone was in excess of $8 billion, if our national debt is $10 billion, we could lay $8 billion worth of damage at Dorian alone of that. Because we have to, let's say it has happened, and even though we have not rebuilt, that $8 billion could change our economy drastically. But let's go back to the twin hurricanes, Wilma and Jane. Let's go back to all the other hurricanes that hit the Bahamas. They are in the tunes of billions of dollars, not only in actual damages, but you also must look at the impact on the GDP over the last 2 decades at least. What impact of these hurricanes had on our GDP that interrupted the way we function. And there has to be a balance in making that argument concerning, okay, how much of this we can blame on hurricanes being the act of nature and their growing impact, that we have to make an argument saying that had we not had this type of environment, this global change, then the hurricanes would not be at the level they would be, and we could have survived a 1 and 2, which would be a normal process. But when you start getting to 3, 4, and we saw 5, maybe 6, that is absolutely direct impact of global warming, the sea is warming, and all those different things. So there is some work that we have to do, but I honestly, in my own personal mind, I think if we were to look at the balance of those 3 things, we could, within the next 2 years, eliminate our national debt, as well as move towards some sustained economic development and look at shoring up our islands, utilizing the resources that is being produced called aragonite.
Okay, so when we come back from this break that we're about to take, I want to take a closer look at these carbon credit markets. There are several of them around the world. And you would think that if they were functioning as they were supposed to be functioning, that this would not be as much of a problem as it still is. We're going to take a closer look at that on the other side. So this is GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. I'm Michelle Malcolm. Stay with us. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 Hyperimmune Egg Powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for a rims, paint, and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Tracklife, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires, cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Blessed love.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. Great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun.
Welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm here, along with C. Alan Johnson, who clearly stepped away from his camera. I suspect there he is. He's back. And we are talking carbon credits today. Now, you would think that seeing that companies are driven by money, putting a price on carbon emissions should encourage businesses to stop polluting, right? Well, that's exactly what carbon markets were designed to do: reduce emissions by charging polluters. But so far, they haven't achieved that aim. And here's why. Let's go to clip number 3.
Towards the end of the 1980s, America had a problem. For years, its power stations had been emitting large amounts of sulfur dioxide, which was falling back to Earth as acid rain, causing harm to plants, aquatic animals, and infrastructure. But there was no incentive for the power plants to stop emitting sulfur dioxide.
Weather warnings and acid rain alert is in effect.
So in 1990, the American government launched an experiment, passing a law to force polluters to pay for their emissions by establishing a new kind of market, governed by a system called cap and trade. 8 years later, acid rain levels over large regions in Eastern America have fallen by 20%, and a new way of cutting emissions was born. In 1997, the International Climate Change Treaty, known as the Kyoto Protocol, suggested applying the concept of cap and trade to carbon. In the years that followed, different countries and regions set up their own carbon markets. Many of these used cap and trade, and this is how it works. A government sets a cap on the amount of CO2 that can be emitted by an industry. It splits the cap into permits and either gives or sells these permits to firms. If a company doesn't use up all of its allowance, it can sell what it doesn't need. If it needs more permits, it can buy them from those with spares. Each year, the cap gets stricter, and the shrinking pool of permits gets more expensive.
The genius of cap and trade systems, when they're done properly, is that they both use a stick and a carrot. That gives them an incentive to innovate, to get cleaner and cleaner. It provides that carrot for innovation, and that trading mechanism, the magic of the market, unleashes those animal spirits in favor of decarbonization.
While regulation can introduce a new industry standard, it doesn't give firms an incentive to cut emissions below a certain level. But a carbon market creates a race in which companies are motivated to cut emissions as fast as they can. The more they cut emissions, the fewer permits they have to buy, and the more excess they have to sell. So in theory, in a cap and trade market, carbon dioxide emissions should fall, but in reality, they've continued to rise, because incentives only work if they're big enough.
Now, carbon markets are great in theory, but in practice, we run into a problem. Carbon prices have been far too low to motivate change that's needed to decarbonize the world economy.
According to Joseph Stiglitz and Nicholas Stern, two economists, in order to meet the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, the price of carbon worldwide needs to be between $50 and $100 per tonne by 2030. However, the majority of carbon prices still remain far below that figure. What's more, even if carbon is priced appropriately, the fines for exceeding permitted levels are sometimes ineffectively low. In the EU, a fine can be as low as €100 per excess tonne. Considering that's not much more than the price of a permit, it's hardly a deterrent. And that's if firms even get caught.
Now, in theory, regulators enforce carbon prices and permits, but in practice, it can be very challenging. There's measurement problems, direct emissions versus indirect emissions. There's questions of cheating, for example. You find in most markets around the world, enforcement is lax and punishment is not great.
And even if some markets adopt effective deterrents, the ones next door may not.
If we look globally, you have mind-boggling variety of rules, systems, enforcement mechanisms. And so if you're a company that's based in multiple countries, divisions of your company making the same product in the same way will face a mind-boggling patchwork of rules, regulations that differ. Worse than that, you have leakage among these markets as well.
Okay, so we're going to, in a minute, talk about leakage and what that looks like. But you know what that video so adequately explained was that what some people, some environmentalists, in particular Seattle, have a problem with this whole idea of carbon credits. Because as far as they're concerned, it's really a facade because people are finding a way to get around it, and it's not having the impact that it was designed to have. How do you respond to that?
I agree, because, like, for instance, when you move to Australia or the USA, China, or Europe, each one of them have their own various different standards, and then areas within there, like even in the US, every state may have its own standard, and most states are autonomous. And so, until we adopt exactly as the video said, a punishment that fits the crime as a motivator, as well as a standard for measurement of direct and indirect carbon emissions. And indirect carbon emissions could be motor vehicles, could be something you're doing in your yard. It could be your consumption of plastics and other things that you take for granted and throw away. And so we need to have a measuring tool. Let's use the Bahamas as a good example. We can very easily measure the amount of plastics and cans, or just the throwaways, the consumables that we bring into the country, even the clothes we have. And so we could have measured all of those. We could then begin a recovery system. We don't do recycling. I know in New Providence, we pay for garbage here on Grand Bahama, but in New Providence, you don't pay. And there's a need for the government to begin to charge for the collection of garbage, like most cities around, developed cities around the world do. Well, we can actually offset that using carbon offsets or carbon credits, depending on how you want to describe it, by starting a recycling program and the separation of the maybe 4 major things that goes into our homes: the metal cans, the aluminum, the glass, and the cardboard, and the cardboard as well as the plastics. As we begin doing that, then the way we can measure that, so we brought in 50 million tons of these indirect producers of carbon, and we can show that we recovered 30 million of those. That becomes 30 million tons of those. That becomes a carbon offset, a carbon credit, using some international scale that we could claim credit for. So we can see where the very things we have an aversion to, paying garbage or form of tax, we can reduce that by basically utilizing some of the methodologies that is going to be developed. And so we have to also, in our country, begin to advocate for various standards to be established. I personally believe that the carbon fine should be over $100. They said 50 to 100. I am, as a environmentalist, knowing the impact it's having on us, I believe it should be over $100 per metric ton, or whatever, how they measure it. And I think that we need to have an international consortium get together and create tools we have technology now to measure the creation of carbon, as well as those who would do recovery offset. One of your people on there asked about greenwashing. That's one of the
I was
major
about to
things.
put that question up. Yeah. Let me just ask the question for our radio audience. Siobhan is asking, what is greenwashing as it relates to carbon credits? Go ahead, Sue Ellen.
Right. Greenwashing is where companies mismarket their so-called impact on the environment. They'll tell you that, we have a negative impact of recycling, and you check the recycling, it doesn't have the amount of recycled products in it. They say they're reducing these various different things. You check it, you verify. So basically it becomes a marketing tool of what they claim to be, and no one verifies their true impact on the environment they're having on the environment. You may have the farmers or somebody who say, we have these new farming practices. One of the greatest abuse of this you can recognize is Australia, where they recognize there were people who claimed to be producing carbon offset that wasn't. They had companies who claimed that they have reduced their consumption, or they claimed that they weren't using particular things in their production, which was carbon dioxide producers, when they actually were. And so greenwashing is where you basically say you're doing something and you're not really doing it. And so these are all the things that this whole new carbon market, as we begin to recognize it. When we start talking, myself and others start talking about this carbon credits 2 decades ago, a lot of people thought you were kind of crazy, because it was an infancy. And you remember when many of us started talking about the climate change and the impact, and people, they call us tree huggers and all kind of different name. But now we are beginning to see the measurable proof of the science behind climate change and global warming. Just let me say one point, right? I know we often make the argument that the global warming and climate change is destroying the earth. It's not going to destroy the earth. It's going to destroy the habitants of the earth. The earth is going to survive, and the earth is going to rejuvenate and restore itself. We just won't be around to see it. And so technically, we're not destroying the earth. We're destroying ourselves. We're destroying the ecosystem that we need for us to survive. So
very
the problem is that
because
when you take it
Earth
away,
has gone through the ice age and all the other. The Earth has gone through climate change before, but you're right.
Yes.
It's the Earth is still here. It's the inhabitants of the Earth that are going to be most impacted.
Right. So what happens is we have to be careful that these big companies, polluters, don't allow us to use languages or verbiage that cause us to be disassociated from it. They say, climate change is destroying the earth. So then you start saying, okay, my environment is okay. No, climate change and global warming is destroying you, us, the environment we live in. So it's like less oxygen, less land mass, less everything. And so we are destroying ourselves through consumption. And so when we begin to personalize the impact that's on us, as well as reproducing, we get a better understanding of what we can do to actually relieve it. I think personally that the Bahamas should have an education program. The Minister of the Environment should take an aggressive process of educating Bahamian as to what carbon is, its impact, and what we can do from reducing our consumption, moving to greener energies, garbage recovery, recovery of oil that we have in the ground, and all these. It's so many aspects of this carbon economy. Is for lack of a better word, there is a carbon economy that can itself become a net income producer for the Bahamas. I'm just talking about us reducing our carbon footprint, utilizing carbon offset processes, and even embracing technology that actually begin to capture. Like, so carbon offset could be practices that you do naturally, like planting more trees. Restoration of the mangroves is another billion-dollar industry. Making sure that we stop destroying our seagrass and even planting seagrass. All of these different things. And so and this comes right to this AquaMarine economy that Eden Mary Gator describes in her white paper concerning creating, because what you're doing now is you're combining the green economy, the blue economy, the green economy on land, the blue economy of the sea, the orange economy using our creative ability to think of new things in new ways, the knowledge economy using what exists to develop these different things, the digital economy where we use tools and innovation to think of things, as well as utilizing the conceptual economy where we begin to see things that it doesn't exist yet and begin to develop processes. So when you look at this concept, where Eden Mary Gator says, oh, we're going to have this, the Bahamas could be the first place in the world that this aquamarine economy exists. That aquamarine economy is a blending of the orange, the green, the blue, the knowledge, the digital, and conceptual economy as one unified platform. And I think it's something that we should consider, considering that we, in maybe 50 years or so, we could very well become climate refugees. And what do you mean by climate refugees? As the water, as the sea level rises, many of our islands will cease to exist. And like other countries, we may have to go find other places to go live because the majority of the Bahamas will be underwater. Now, if you begin to take this progressive step, we talk about these billions of tons of aragonite that we have and it's deposited every year that's actually washed down into deep, deep ocean. We can actually begin shoring up. We have countries around the world that's building islands. So clearly, we already have the islands. We can begin to shore up the Bahamas to do it with some progressive thinking 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. More so, let me tell you why it becomes easy, Michelle. The major islands of the Bahamas, Grand Bahama, and Grand Bahama itself has even ability to adopt and adapt new technologies. But New Providence, more specifically, we have to be very intentional in what we need to do to begin to think of how we want to protect New Providence from the rising sea rise, whether it be building an enclave around it, water removal system, and as we begin to build new things, begin to lift the islands and lift the environment. Let's use an example, Western Florida, that a lot of Bahamians like to West Sawgrass, that area. When I went to Western Florida in 1993, before it became a city in 1996, Western Florida was built literally in an environment that was underwater. If you go to Western Florida, if you look at Western Florida now and look at it, they have a masterful water management system. And so it is possible when you look at other countries around the world, we could put in water management systems if we look down the road 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road and begin to utilize the collective intelligence more so of our youth to put these problems in front of them and say, let's seek to resolve these type environment. And let me just add this one piece. Eden Mary Gator is working on a platform to enhance the very aspect of the green economy called FICA Link and FICA Lab that actually will look to get the so-called Gen Z and millennials to come together as one comprehensive digital think tank and begin to address many of these issues that is facing us that somehow we seem to ignore on a daily basis.
Okay, so I want to take a closer look at the leakage in the carbon credit markets that we've been talking about. Carbon credit market leakage is a problem that must be addressed if carbon markets are to have any chance of success. Once again, like with so many other, pardon me?
Or harmonize between them, become equal, all things being equal.
Yes. So once again, we're looking at a problem of, as it relates to other things, we're looking at a problem of poor regulation and to some degree, dishonesty and greed. Let's go to the next clip.
The direct result of this patchwork of systems is known as carbon leakage. A business or an industry relocates from an area with high environmental regulations to somewhere where the rules are more relaxed, which means it can avoid having to pay for its carbon emissions. But these problems have solutions.
The role of regulation is important because absent regulation, nobody would pay for carbon emissions or pay a penalty for emitting carbon. So almost by definition, government has to create the market, set the rules, enforce penalties, set a carbon cap, for example, the maximum amount a company or industry can emit.
If governments limited the number of permits, it would drive their price up. Setting a minimum price that rises over time would mean the price would never fall too low, and governments could enforce more stringent deterrents for potential rule breakers.
Getting serious about regulating carbon markets really involves regulators making it clear to industry that they will not tolerate cheating, they will not tolerate leakage or obfuscation, and ultimately that they will hold corporate executives to account for their carbon emissions. I think we're getting there, particularly in the European Union. We're seeing much more seriousness, that this is not a frivolous greenwashing exercise, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, but rather that this is as serious as safety or other regulations. This is not yet the case in many other parts of the world.
It would help if the world had more integrated carbon markets, but as that's unlikely to happen in the short term, one solution to help prevent carbon leakage is a border tax. The EU has recently proposed to tax the carbon emitted in goods produced outside its carbon market. Importers would have to pay the same amount as if the goods had been made in the EU, meaning it wouldn't be any cheaper to source goods from a region with less regulation.
If we're going to get serious about dealing with climate change, within the next few years, we must achieve something like a global carbon price and some form of harmonization amongst economies. Now we're getting to something like momentum in this direction. The big kahuna is China because it's such an industrial powerhouse, it's so carbon intensive. If it doesn't get serious and work with other economies to harmonize carbon pricing and carbon trading systems, then most of the world's efforts will probably be undermined by the fact that countries like China are producing heavily carbon-intensive goods, and we'll see multinationals shifting production to those places even more than they have in the past.
As climate change has moved up the political agenda, governments are starting to improve how their carbon markets work. Since 2019, the EU has been taking steps to reduce the number of permits it hands out. Partly as a result, carbon prices in the EU are now hitting record highs of over €60 per tonne. Carbon prices in other markets are also rising as regulators look at ways to make them more effective. If it seems that money can be made, other countries might create their own markets.
We have seen just in the last 12 to 18 months a dramatic takeoff.
Difficulties as it relates to that clip playing. It didn't make sense for it to continue if it's going to be dropping out that much. But see, Alan, from what you did hear of that, what are your thoughts on how to minimize or eliminate this leakage?
And I agree. And see, and this is where we were talking about earlier, is that we need the harmonization across all countries. And this is a major role now that we have been lifted up, accelerated in the conversation concerning the impact of climate change and global warming. We could begin to set a standard for ourselves that becomes the benchmark for which we begin to agitate for other countries in the region and around the world to go. We may be a small country in regards to production, but we have a loud voice through the impact it has had on us and the future impact it will have on us in making the argument and becoming front and center on the global stage. We need some more environmental vanguard, some more agitators. In fact, considering the impact it has on us, we need some more environmentalists, not ones where they go to the beach and pick up garbage. We're talking about individuals that actually knows with some form of intimacy the environment, its impact, and reduction of carbon on it, because we are in its direct part of its impact. For our very existence over the next 50 years depend on this impact being negated. And for the mere fact that even if we were to meet the COP26 goals, I think of 2.5 degrees, we will still cease to exist. We need 3.5, maybe 4 degrees halting of this. And we actually need reversal for the Bahamas to survive. And so for me, this is an absolute opportunity for us to accelerate ourselves in the global conversation, as well as create an industry around preserving our environment, from our fisheries to our conchs to our coral reefs that's now being threatened, to expanding our corpus and protecting it with these clear cutting that we're doing for development, changing the very aspect of construction that we do and raising for it. I mean, we can become an eco paradise, the rebirth of the Garden of Eden. I think in the 90s, I forget, they had the word Eden in it. They had before we move into the technology for agri-tech and other things, the Bahamas was considered an Eden for the global feeding, eccentrically, if the world had faced a catastrophe. And so we can go back into that concept and make the Bahamas an eco paradise and a representative for the environment. Now, we have thousands of ships that pass through the Bahamas every single year. And I know we say we want to be this ship registry, but we can become the jurisdiction for which we begin to register boats and cruise ships that actually meet our new high standard as a voice for global warming, for carbon credits, carbon offset, etc., and begin to penalize ships and planes, etc., that pass through our waters and our airspace that don't meet these requirements. And so I think we just can't talk it. They say we can't just talk about it. We must actually become about it, like they say on the street. Don't bring the talk, bring the walk. And so I think this is an opportunity for Philip Grave Davis to, literally transform the conversation from a small island development state type environment, and just not move himself, but move a team of individuals into the forefront of agitation and advocacy for the change that's necessary, so that we can become the big voice from the little small island developing states. And I think we should examine not just the carbon credits for our rebuilding of our economy, the carbon offsets, as well as the damages that's been done, but we could actually begin to embrace technology. This, I want you to understand, carbon credits is about technology, it's about data. And I know we are data averse in our country, but this is the opportunity as we talk about digitization and digitalization of our economy. We can begin to use technology and advanced technology to begin to measure these things. And some of the side effects of this, we'll control immigration, we'll control a whole bunch of things as the byproduct, because the same monitoring tools that we would have to use would monitor boats and planes and everything entering our country. the same
Well,
type of
speaking. Hold on, C. Allen, because C. Allen, you could go, boy. You gotta take a breath. But but speaking of immigration, there's another aspect to our legal immigration problem that is having an impact on our on this whole question of carbon credits. I have a friend who lives in the Carmichael area who says that every night they have to close all of the windows in their house because every night suspected, alleged illegal immigrants are in there burning our trees for coal. And you will see them on the side of the street selling coal. Now, where they get this
they're
coal
not
from?
only cutting down the major corpuses that some of those trees. Yeah.
Yeah, finish your point. Finish your point.
What I'm saying is they're cutting down the larger trees, and those trees also provide shelter for other trees because none of our coppice exists in isolation, and so even our indigenous pines provides a form of protection. And so here's the problem: is when they disturb that environment, it allows these invasive type plants to actually take over the particular area, and so the damage they are doing for the production of coal. And when you look at the production of coal that they're producing, you could go down to Portskeet Dock and other places and see coal being exported out of the Bahamas, on sloops and boats and etc. And so if it all, not pointing at Haitians exclusively, but if the history and the record reflect that Haiti has destroyed its almost entire coppice, entire trees in Haiti, because of the very thing that is being allowed to be practiced here in the Bahamas. And so this is where I said,
and that is a part of the reasons why part of the reason why that country suffers so badly from the natural disasters that they have, because they're destroying the environment. And we are allowing them to bring that culture here, and they're doing the same thing here that they would have done in their own country. And so you're talking about destroying the environment to the degree that will have an impact on all of us as well.
Absolutely. Not only does it reduce our carbon credits, our carbon offset, it actually creates an environment because those coppices act as a form of protection for when storms and winds and other things happen. Those coppices also reduce the wind that causes land erosion because it also slows down water. So all of these have detrimental effect on our environment. So this is why I'm simply saying that we must this is why I say we can't be about talking. We have to be about action. And again, New Providence is 7 by 21. Technology exists for us to monitor this in real time. I mean, I personally have 3 drones that could police all of New Providence about every 3 days. So we spent a few $1 million on drones, etc.
You could use them drones what the former administration pay all that money for. Did they ever find them?
No, that's what I'm saying. No, I don't know. I'm waiting to hear about them. But understand this. Do you know? I am associated with a company, and I tried to sell the previous administration on this. I'm associated with a satellite company that aim at the Bahamas, and they will give us a daily shot of every single island in this country. Now, I want people to understand we have more than 700 islands and keys. We have repeated that so much that we actually begin to believe it. Now, we might be reducing because of global warming, but we can begin to document the landmass on a daily basis see the changes in real time that is happening to our Bahamas. And when before Dorian came, I try to sell them on it, and I spend months afterwards trying to say, let's utilize this information that's available to us for minimal charge to begin to document our land, our sea, and our environment. And so the technology is there for us. I see that the current administration has created, I guess, some ambassadors or whatever within the office of the Prime Minister. But we need more than talk. We need actionable records, actionable data that's being collected. I mean, we haven't heard yet from the Minister of the Environment. I'm hoping that this period of 6 months, he's been in deep thought, reflection, and planning. And when he comes with the budget debate, he's going to have one big fat budget for us to start these digital vanguards and agitators, etc. But let me tell you what also has to happen. Our environmentalists all act within their own cocoons, their own ecosystem. We must bring together one harmonious type environment where the BNT, the Nature Conservatory, the Save the Base, the Blue Action Lab that's being established right here on Grand Bahama, and so much more to actually begin to work in harmony and cross collection and cross sharing of data in one central database that is shared with or given to government. Just on this economic development, we talk about these economic development, and it's promised by the government of the Bahamas as well as by the Grand Bahama Port Authority that Grand Bahama will become the blue ocean, the ocean industry of blue, the ocean economy or the blue economy. I'm saying that maybe we should look at making the Northern Bahamas the headquarters of the AquaMarine economy. We have the landmass, we have the infrastructure and the room for this grouping of individuals to come here as part of a global think tank that actually looks at the entire Bahamas and the Caribbean by extension. And we can do it. I know that the one of the principals in the grandson of Sir Jack Haywood, Rupert Haywood, has a Blue Action Lab project for which called Vita, which was just visited by the Royals, came out of or supported by. And he has this concept of an incubation type environment for Grand Bahama to become that blue hub. But I think we need to expand this into this AquaMarine concept that Eden Marigator has developed. And believe it or not, that could create thousands of jobs within itself right here on Grand Bahama and begin the transformation of our country.
All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to look more closely at carbon offsets. As C. Allen pointed out, there is a difference between carbon markets and carbon offsets. And as you will learn in this clip that we're going to play on the other side of the break, there are some who are saying that maybe carbon offsets are a part of the problem of slowing down the fight against climate change. We're going to go deep on the other side. So stay with us. This is GPS. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Don't you go anywhere.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting, sugar-free, berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for rims, paints, and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Trackline, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires. Cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Blessed love.
It's gotten harder and harder to get your daily requirement of vital nutrients from food alone. Without additional vitamin and nutrient support, your health and well-being can suffer drastically. That's why Z-Radical was specifically formulated. It combines a blend of antioxidant-rich vitamins, minerals, and botanicals with the protective powers of fucoidan to help fill the gaps from lack of nutrients in your foods. The core of Z-Radical is fucoidan, a naturally occurring polysaccharide that helps stimulate immune reaction, protecting you against inflammation and oxidative stress. We harvest this powerful mineral-rich nutrient from brown seaweed, harvested only from the world's most pristine ocean waters to ensure the purest quality. It's then extracted using cold process technology to ensure maximum levels of bioavailability. Then we add essential vitamins that help to protect your cardiovascular and nervous systems, and are crucial for optimal immune and neurological function. Z-Radical also includes a proprietary blend of delicious antioxidant-rich fruits and berries. This great-tasting combination helps your body combat free radical imbalances that can contribute to a variety of degenerative conditions like arthritis and heart disease. Z-Radical. Experience the power of fucoidan with antioxidant-rich berries, 8 essential vitamins, and more to provide you with potent health benefits. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Economics, finance, or business that could change the future of the Bahamas? Is your completed work fit for publication? You could win $20,000 from the T. Baswell Donaldson Research Prize for unpublished papers that adhere to academic standards of formatting and presentation. Submission deadline is April 30th, 2022. For more information, email exr@centralbankbahamas.com or ka.demerit@centralbankbahamas.com.
Nassau Tile wants you to celebrate their anniversary with them. That's why they are giving you 20% off store-wide. Save up to 40% off select 24 by 24 4 by 48 porcelain tiles. But the big celebration is on ceramic tiles. Now a whopping 40% off. Let the tile experts guide you in selecting the right tiles for your kitchen backsplash, living room, bathroom, or even your patio. Don't miss the anniversary sale going on now at Nassau Tile on Doswell Street. Sale ends March 31st.
Welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm in your company, and I'm talking today with C. Alan Johnson about carbon credits and how the Bahamas could benefit from said credits. And if you'd like to join us on this conversation, the numbers to call are 326-0271, 326-0271, 326-0271, or 326-0272, 326-0272, and our WhatsApp line is 824-9952, 824-9952. So you heard C. Allen say early in the show that there is a difference between carbon markets and carbon offsets. And we are now going to learn a lot more about carbon offsets, and you're going to be surprised at some of what you find out in this next clip. But I think we have a caller. No, we don't. Okay. So given the nature of the climate crisis we now face, it is very important for the general public to have a better understanding of what progress is or is not actually happening. You'll see hundreds of companies making big, bold climate claims about their plans for net zero emissions. And one would think that we are well on our way to meeting the emission reduction trajectory that we need to be on. However, a closer look reveals that we are not there. And a key reason for this is dishonest use of offsets that are not doing what they claim to be doing. Is that a caller for the show? Okay. There are some who argue that because of this, the carbon offset market is slowing the fight against climate change. Let's go to that clip.
We have a massive potential for sort of willful blindness. We can convince ourselves of things regardless of what the facts are. And so that's what tends to happen in these cases. It's not that anybody is setting out to commit climate fraud. They sort of walk themselves into a situation and they convince themselves of one thing, and that allows them to convince themselves of another thing. But at the end of the day, they're doing something that makes no sense at all.
My name is Ben Elgin. I wrote the story about how the billion-dollar market for carbon offsets is setting back the fight against climate change. So one of the challenges in reporting on carbon offsets and trying to figure out what's going on is really finding good experts who have been steeped in this marketplace and are willing to candidly talk about it. One of the best people for this is a fellow named Mark Trexler, and I've been talking to him for more than a decade.
My name is Mark Trexler. I've worked in climate change for the last 30 years. I was actually hired by the World Resources Institute in Washington to work on the first carbon offset project in 1988. In terms of defining a carbon offset, one of the beauties, so to speak, of greenhouse gases, sort of the silver lining of greenhouse gases, when you put up a molecule of CO2 into the atmosphere, it can be anywhere in the planet in 7 days. And therefore, if there's an option to reduce emissions on the other side of the planet, and you can do that very cheaply as compared to doing it in your factory, for example, then why not pay that person, that factory on the other side of the planet to reduce their emissions? Then you are, in a sense, offsetting your emissions, and the atmosphere doesn't really see your emissions anymore.
So carbon offsets have been around for quite some time, and they were actually key with these international climate agreements, such as the Kyoto Protocol, which mandated the wealthiest countries reduce their greenhouse gas emissions.
The treaty was signed on the 11th of December 1997.
Decided. The business community in general saw carbon offsets as a huge opportunity to comply with whatever policies and measures might be coming down the pike on climate change much more cost effectively.
We've seen a huge surge in companies making big proclamations about how they're going carbon neutral or zeroing out all of their carbon emissions.
We're going to reduce our carbon footprint to net zero.
Unilever is committing to net zero emissions.
We can achieve a net zero emissions world.
We began looking at these corporate claims of dramatically reduced emissions, and we noticed so many of these companies were using carbon offsets to achieve these aims. And as we began to look at the carbon offset projects themselves, what we found is that the environmental benefits claimed by these companies are not actually what they seem to be. And as we sort of saw and spotted a number of these very aggressive carbon offset projects, which appeared to be generating inflated credits or bogus credits, we saw a number of them were associated with the Nature Conservancy.
More on that in a moment. That report is actually produced by Bloomberg News. And I wanted to take a pause right there because it would have been too long to play the entire clip. So I broke it in two. And you're going, it's some explosive information that's going to come out in that next clip. But see, Alan, from what you've heard so far, do you think that there is valid concern that these carbon offset projects are really doing more damage than good in terms of slowing the fight against climate change? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. Most of the climate offset now, because there's no universal standard, are more sham than they are production. Because I can almost create a windmill going through a tunnel and put some old blankets and sheets in there and simply say, I have now this special formula that absorbs carbon from the air. And because my information is new or not nascent to the industry, no one has a way of authenticating what I actually claim that is happening. You have people that are claiming to plant trees that don't exist or the volume that they have. No one is measuring the number of carbon that is sequestered into the soil or sand. You have things you have machinery that's claiming to take carbon dioxide out of the air and make it into other things. We have machines that claim to take carbon dioxide out of the air and insert it miles underground. And nobody's going underground to check that you really put that much carbon dioxide in the ground. I mean, it's so much different claims of people who are, it's $1 billion industry now of the claims and investments and research, etc. So everybody is making a claim that really can't be authenticated. And so this is why it's important that when people now make these claims that is bogus at best, what happens now is that you have a company, say in China, who is claiming, oh, we have a company in the Caribbean, we produce an extra 50 billion tons of carbon dioxide past our cap. We have this company down there that claims that they're doing $51 billion worth of offsets. And because no one authenticates or can verify that, the company may not be doing anything, or maybe only be doing 5 billion. And so basically, the company in China has no motivation to reduce its production of carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases that causes, because it's not just carbon dioxide, it's methane and other chemicals that can contributing. I don't want us to think exclusively of it. And so you have dumps that's claiming to capturing methane gas and other things, and you have recycling companies that claim to be doing things and reusing things like recycling plastics, and all they do is collect it, shred it, and throw it to the dump, and take it back to the dump. And so it's ripe for a form of corruption. And so all of these things is the balancing act if we are to save us from ourselves as opposed to saving the planet. So this is why, again, brings us right front and center that the Bahamas can recognize these things and begin to engage in conversation and make some climate ambassadors from amongst us to study and become well voiced in these and become voices around the world for creating standards of carbon offsets.
Do you think a part of the problem, C. Allen, is that the powers that be don't know how to deal with this, but don't want to admit that they don't know, and therefore won't reach out to people who do know? I have a question that's being asked by Rain, who says, if there's a way to monitor these carbon emissions and charge them for it, why isn't our government taking advantage of this? How do you respond?
Because we can't measure what they're doing. Those countries have to measure. We can't go to China or to the European Union or to Australia or to the US and begin to measure their emissions. We don't even have the equipment or the resources to do it. So this is where it's part of an honesty system, and this is where it's ripe for corruption. Wherever there's billions of dollars, there will be some shortcuts. Yes, because there's some people that are sitting out there that's making hundreds of millions of dollars who says, by the time y'all find out, I'll be done dead and gone and spend my money. And so if you look at companies, this is about profit. This is the carbon contamination is profit driven. And so whatever companies can market themselves into having you believe that they are having this so-called global impact, will use marketing to convince you that you deal with the consequences.
Yeah. Okay, we have a caller on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Well, good afternoon, Michelle and C. Allen Johnson.
Hey, C. Allen. Hey, Graham.
If we sit here and we try to fool ourselves into believing that they do not know, I think we're doing ourselves an injustice. Having been to Copenhagen, COP21, COP26, I'm pretty sure they understand what it is. Do they have the solutions? No. They may have been concerned enough to go in and ask somebody at all those forums, what are the solutions? And they probably would know. At the very least, they do know what it is because they've been to those meetings. So if we have to go on them knowing what the problem is and not looking for the solution with vigor, but I must give the minister some credit, like C. Allen said, and I'm going to go and see him because I think C. Allen and I should see him and present some of these ideas. I think if nothing is done by next election, then I can firmly say at that time they are willingly, woefully not doing something. And then I must start to question, is somebody making it financially viable for them not to do anything? And I'm trying to be politically correct here.
Powerful question.
But the only other solution for me in the short term is to build a solar-powered round home that can withstand what is to come, because lighthouses do not fall down. Even in the worst Hurricane Dorian, the one thing that had no damage was the Hopetown Lighthouse. So we should at least be building around.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wrap up. I have the authority because I've been speaking to the same things. C. Allen has spoken before me. He's my senior. He should. And a mentor. But I've actually done it. They've called me tree hugger when I was speaking to that in solar. And then I said, we have oil, another resource. And by not tapping the oil, C. Allen, maybe we could get some credits for not doing that, for leaving that in the ground. But I said we could get the oil to solarize the whole country. Someone's got to pay for it. There's many other ways, of course. That's why I said as a last resort. So they called me, what did they call oil fish? I said, listen, you can't call me every name in the book, But you better do something because it's starting to get real warm. And when it gets real warm, Michelle, that's when you get the Category 6. And what have we done to prepare for climate change? Because it's coming, and it looks like no one's doing much about it. So what are we doing to prepare for the Cat 6 and Cat 7s? See, that's what I want to know. Or are we just sitting down hoping it doesn't happen?
Wow.
Anyway, good show.
Thanks so much for calling.
Hey, Graham, you can't just. Hey, Graham is going. But I tell Graham. No, I'm saying you can't just build round and strong unless we change or something. You got to build high. Because what you've done now is all you've done now is build you a submarine with no windows and no air. Because when the water comes, it'll cover you.
Boy, I tell you.
So he said that's what I'm saying. We I believe, like he expressed and other stuff expressed, is that the solution is within us. And I go back to what is happening on Grand Bahama, involved with individuals in the blue economy and the green economy and this new AquaMarine economy, is the younger people have a much better grasp of what this is, because they not only are aware of the problem, but because they are technologically inclined, they're more to look for the technological solutions that is facing us. And so we, again, I don't think any country with the branding that we have, our geolocation, our shipping lanes, our air thing, has a greater voice to begin to make this argument on the global stage for the change that is necessary. So the Greta girl, we have probably dozens of them waiting right in the Bahamas that have just not yet been given the resources to speak up and speak out. And because what we do is we keep looking to our political leadership. I thank you, Mr. Philip Brave Davis, for being the spark that starts this. And I'm asking you now to go out into the how you say those the kindlings and whatever, and let's start a fire throughout the entire Bahamas, and making the whole Bahamas, making every citizen an advocate, and we can begin to look. And let's go back to what Graham said concerning solar. We are a carbon-based economy. This is why when we begin to look at the fact that we have yet to touch even a fraction of hospitality, even a fraction of tourism, we can go and combine this AquaMarine economy with a new hospitality and tourism model, building 20, 30, 40,000 new bed nights in this country, and creating the environment as a platform for the world to begin to have the discussion as what's now, what's new, and what's next. And so I'm simply saying is that we, again, opportunities knocking at our door. We just need to not peep through. We need to open it wide and embrace it. And I say, like Mr. Davis said, we have the recovery, we have the money, we have the resources. You have other countries that needs hundreds of billions of dollars for recovery. Well, we need $10 billion to retire the national debt. We need another $10 billion to put a big punch to get us going. And believe it or not, even without begging, those resources are available to us, even in our changing our economic development model of building the Bahamas up, as well as embracing these new combination, like we use the sixth economy, orange, blue, green, knowledge, conceptual, digital, as the AquaMarine economy, to simply say, let's build the economy and pull these 50% of the people in the Bahamas who's unemployed or underemployed into the rebuilding of this new economic models that changes the way we do things.
Okay, so I guess you partially answered Bertha's question. Are these things easy and inexpensive to be done? Inexpensive? No. Easy? No,
but
I guess it's debatable.
Yeah, easy is relative. Relative based on your knowledge of what needs to be done. You know, so you can't, this cannot be a situation where we go into a round room, in a round dark room painted black, looking for the dime in the corner that isn't there. We have to basically know what we're doing, knowing what we're trying to achieve. But we have to start with, at the same time, recognizing that these changes that we may be advocating for may not happen. So we have to also redesign the Bahamas we want to preserve. But at the same time, we also need to begin to agitate, not just for us, just some small island states that's in worse condition than we are. And you know what the beauty is? God has blessed us with the resources necessary to preserve the Bahamas. Those billions of tons of aragonite people are running around here talking about selling.
That keep replenishing itself. Yeah. Yeah, we are blessed. Now listen to this now. What happens when the watchdogs that you think are looking out for you as it relates to this whole question of carbon offsets maybe aren't looking out for you in the manner that you think they are? We would have heard the Nature Conservancy mentioned in that last clip. On the other side of the break, we're going to look at a specific project involving a very large corporation and the Nature Conservancy. And I want you at the end of that clip to make up your mind as to whether or not we need to be paying a closer look at all of these projects that claim to be doing good for this whole climate change question as it relates to these offsets. We'll be back after these words. Stay with us. This is GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 Hyperimmune Egg Powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for rims, paints, and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Trackline, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires. Cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Glasses love.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. Great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun.
Welcome back to GPS. I have to tell you guys, I went to Tiki Bikini Hut yesterday, and kudos to the server who convinced me to try something else, because y'all know every time I go there, I eat the same thing, right? So I decided to try their grilled snapper, and snapper, by the way, is my favorite fish. And so, she said, Miss Malcolm, you need to try something else. I said, okay. So I tried the grilled snapper. Lord have mercy. So good. Oh my Lord. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's going to replace oxtail, right? But as a fish lover and a snapper lover, and I said to her, well, I don't want it fried. She said, we grill it. I said, okay, let me try the grilled. My God, that thing that tastes good. That thing seasoned with love. Okay, they seasoned that like they seasoned that for their ma. I mean it. Oh my Lord. Anyhow, focus, Michelle. Focus. I say all that to say, go check out the guys at Tiki Bikini Hut on Junkanoo Beach, and I promise you're gonna have a real good time. You're gonna enjoy the food, the atmosphere. It's all good there at Tiki Bikini Hut on Junkanoo Beach. So,
Michelle,
you heard me talk about the nature.
Michelle, before you start, let me ask you.
Break, you would have heard them. Yes. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, he does delivery to Grand Bahama or not?
I'm gonna ask him that question and give you the answer the next time I talk to him. Maybe it's a way to work it out. I don't know. But for those of you based here in Nassau, you just got to go down to Junkanoo Beach, man, and go hang out a little while with Byron and his crew. It's really amazing there. I mean, really good food. All right. So you heard them talk about the Nature Conservancy in that last clip. Well, the Nature Conservancy is one of the largest environmental groups in the world, and they have about $1 billion a year in revenue. And they've been around for 7 decades, at least 7 decades. So they have preserved about 125 million acres of land, and they have done a lot of good work over the years. So let me just make that clear. They have done a lot of good work over the years. They have been very strong in terms of working with corporate partners, and they have taken a very pragmatic and pro-business approach, and they have decided that they will not go out and criticize a big polluter, but rather they are very happy to work with that polluter, I guess, to help them to change their ways. Now, some would say that that's selling out, but the position of the Nature Conservancy is these companies have deep pockets and can help fund important preservation work. And so these companies have partnered with the Nature Conservancy for many years, and that partnership lends a sheen of credibility to the projects. But what if all of that credibility is not warranted? Let's go to the next clip.
Disney, that's a sprawling company with theme parks and cruise lines that burn up diesel fuel. They have office buildings and television studios that consume electricity. So these companies are trying to make major reductions in their carbon footprints, but it's very difficult to change these fundamental ways their businesses operate. So Disney has been a big buyer of carbon offsets that are orchestrated by the Nature Conservancy. One of the projects that they buy from is called Pennsylvania Ridges. And that's a plot of land. Most of the land is actually about a 3-hour drive outside of Philadelphia. Interestingly, this land, 3,000 of these acres, was actually acquired by the Nature Conservancy in the late 1990s. This land was imminently threatened. There was a pending logging contract on this land. So they do what they have done so well for all of these years, which is they go out, they raise money from local philanthropists, and they go buy this land to protect it from developers and loggers. And at the time, according to an archived version of the Nature Conservancy's website, when they were proudly announcing this deal, they said these threats have been abated because of this acquisition by the Nature Conservancy. So it's really interesting now, fast forward 2 decades to earlier this year when they put forward this carbon project. And if you look through it, this land is a key part of that carbon project. And what they're now saying is this land is now once again imminently threatened. 72% of the trees are going to be cut within 5 years. Now, this is just astounding because this land is owned by the Nature Conservancy. They do not clear-cut land that they've bought through philanthropic donations. So this scenario that they've put forward to get carbon revenues is not really plausible. And what that means is when you have Disney coming in and buying these credits, when it eventually lowers its carbon footprint because of these credits, well, that won't be a credible or truthful claim by Disney. So this is an organization that truly understands the threat of the issue of climate change and is wanting to do its part to address this. However, in this situation, it just appears their drive, which they've had for decades, to increase the amount of revenues that it can use for land preservation work. Nature Conservancy and many others see that the carbon credits as a pot of money that they can tap into to further their own benevolent aims. But unfortunately, what this has resulted in is claims of climate progress that just aren't really happening. So the Nature Conservancy defends vigorously these deals, and they and others will say, look, our projects are just following the rules that these registries set up. So some would also put some of the blame on the registries themselves because they're setting up the rules which allow these vapid projects to get up and sold. So we've reached out to all of the companies we mentioned in this story, including Disney. They didn't want to be interviewed for this story, but they all told us that, look, we have to rely on the experts out there, and those experts, they say, are these carbon registries that have been set up.
Very, very interesting indeed. Now, for the record, in response, the Nature Conservancy said that its carbon offset projects adhere to peer-reviewed methodologies and that each project is validated by third-party auditors. According to Lynn Scarlett, Chief External Affairs Officer at the Conservancy, they have absolutely no motivation to not achieve real climate solutions. And the American Carbon Registry also defended the quality of its offsets. Like other credit registries, the group said it is impossible to predict how lands will be managed in the future and prefers to compare forested properties to nearby parcels, including those run by commercial timber harvesters. But in spite of all that being said, that news clip from Bloomberg News raises some serious questions that cannot be ignored. Now, C. Allen, I know that you dropped off there for a second because of a power outage, ironically.
Yes.
A brief power outage.
This was terrible on Grand Bahama by Grand Bahama standard. This lasted almost 60 seconds.
Okay, so we got to figure out what they're doing over there, what these fellas over here ain't figured out yet. But anyway, that's another show. So I know you didn't see the whole clip, but in essence, that clip was referring to a parcel of land that the Nature Conservancy acquired decades ago and saved it at that time from threat. And now fast forward decades later, and it is quoting the same parcel of land that it saved from threat back then, saying that it is under threat again, even though they own it. And now Disney is offsetting, paying in essence for the protection of this land. So it raises a lot of questions.
Right. This is I want people to understand the Nature Conservatory is one of the largest agitators in the world for protection of the environment. In fact, they are a major player in the Bahamas along with the BNT. The Nature Conservatory, from some reports I have from her, who's basically helped through some other research quantify the potential of up to $12 billion worth of carbon credits that's produced in the Bahamas, coming primarily from Grand Bahama and from Andros, and as well about mangroves, etc. So they are people that aggregate data concerning carbon. But what happens is a lot of people are claiming that some of these very organizations that move to protect the environment themselves, because of the need for capital, have been bending the rules. And so this is where again you have you have universities that say they form a certification company, and then they say they are certified by the certification company they certify. And this is where these supposedly these peer review type environment can become cross-contaminated by self-serving interests. And so this is why we need a global standard that doesn't depend on me to police myself or create standards that I have arbitrarily can move and bend the thing. Let's use an example, right? And this is not an attack on the BNT. We remember the Aga Khan, right? We have the BNT for the protection of the environment in the Bahamas. A donation was made to the BNT, and of course we have a canal dredge inside of the
Keep talking for my radio audience while you fix your video. Keep talking, C. Allen. Okay, I think we may have lost C. Allen. I think his battery probably died on his phone. So while we're waiting for him to reconnect, for those of you who he referred to BNT, that's actually the Bahamas National Trust. Okay. So we will wait for him to reconnect. But while we do, I have this one last clip I want to play. This clip, let me just take him out of the screen. Okay. So this one last clip I want to play is asking a very serious question in light of what was revealed in that last clip. And C. Allen brings up a very good point about the problems with a system when I police myself. Are carbon credit, or are carbon offsets, I should say, nothing more than a distraction from the real solution, which is demanding real change on the part of the offenders? That is the question that we need to ask, and let's see if we can get an answer in this next clip.
Most of these Nature Conservancy deals are set up and sold on this exchange. It's called the American Carbon Registry. Now, it's the oldest of these registries that allow voluntary carbon credits to be sold. They've been around since 1996. What these offset registries do is they set up rules, and any carbon offset project has to follow those rules. But there's this tension that's always there. If the rules are too strict, then it's going to be very hard for carbon offset projects to get up and running. So there's this balance going on where the registries want rules that attract projects, but they don't want it to be so strict where it will disincentivize projects from getting listed.
One of the challenges with designing carbon offset systems is that there are normally two people at the table. You have buyers and you have sellers. And to some extent you have policymakers, but the buyers and the sellers are really the ones with the expertise, with the incentive to really participate hard, make a lot of things happen. And the challenge there is that both of them sort of want the same thing, or they're both happy with the same thing. They're happy with low cost offsets and a lot of them because that works for their business model. You end up, though, with nobody really representing the atmosphere, so to speak. Nobody's really representing the climate in those discussions. And so the policies end up biasing the whole system. And you end up in sort of a race to the bottom. And that's what we've seen happen. When it comes specifically to the topic of carbon offsets, I am a fan of carbon offsets in the sense that they can help mitigate climate change. They absolutely can. But, if we're not going to do it correctly in a way that actually does help mitigate climate change, then it's nothing but a distraction. And, after 30 years, you have to start wondering, is it really just a distraction? And that's really unfortunate, but that's where we are. Ultimately, what needs to happen is systemic change. We're sort of nibbling around the edges with some of these different things. We need to change how we produce energy. We need to change how we transport ourselves. We need to change what and how we eat. We need systemic change associated with transitioning to a low carbon economy. A lot of what we're doing today is not promoting systemic change. It's sort of trying to stick your thumb in the dike to preserve the current system. And at the end of the day, that can't really work.
Yeah, and if I like the way they put it in that clip, that you have these people, these people around the table negotiating, but nobody, even the watchdogs that we think should be there to negotiate on behalf of the environment, are not truly doing that because of the influence of the funding that they need for their projects. So if the very watchdog, go ahead.
That's the point that I've been trying to make. Because the Bahamas is an actual participant in the impact of the negative impact of climate change, we would not lie or cheat. And so this is where we could actually become standard bearers and watchdogs of these standards to begin to watch even the watchers. And so this is what I'm saying to you, this is where the Bahamas is in a unique position to create these environmental vanguards, the watchdogs, to become involved in this global argument while developing our economy at the same time.
Powerful. Now you had started to mention something with regard to the Bahamas National to you getting knocked off the call.
Yes, yeah. Somebody from Nassau put the switch again, because we don't do this twice in a row. But what happens is that I was saying that here was we had the Bahamas National Trust, who was protecting, allowed, due to a donation, allowed the Aga Khan to cut a channel in the Exuma Keys, and then he disappeared. And so this is where we talk about the need for funding causes them to bend the rules just a little. And so this is why we have to adequately actually fund these environmental agencies, at least within our borders, to if we have become the vanguards, the protectors of this message, then we have to make sure that those within our borders who will carry the standards that we want to develop is actually funded to the point that they need not be contaminated. And this is where the dynamics of science comes in, because the billions of dollars that we can self-generate, and we talk about these offsets, we talk about changing our habits and what we consume and what we wear and what we drive and all these different things, creates the billions of dollars. This $16 billion a year economy that we have. If we are importing everything, at least what are you doing? We're importing all these things that are negative for every plastic container, every can. Understand, those can uses carbon, some fossil fuel to be made. And so the more we reduce our initial consumption and move into a circular economy of recycling and reusing and repurposing those different things, we then create a greater example of what is possible, while also agitating and advocating for the changes we want to see in other countries. And we could become the model for these things to happen. We could become the model for sustainable tourism, for sustainable hospitality, for sustainable almost any industry. And again, we have the blue, the green, all of these different things. And so again, the Bahamas is at the door of one of the greatest opportunities in our lifetime, those of us that's alive today. And I think we must, with deliberate purpose, begin to look to see how can we maximize this through education, through advocacy, and through preparedness. And so people have to understand, from the garbage collection to the tires to the oil, I mean, everything, all of these are carbon offset, to preserving how we stop clear cutting our yard and then go spending millions of dollars trying to buy plants to replace the trees and things we cut down, planting fruit trees, protecting our natural vegetation, protecting our seashores. The restoring the mangroves alone is $1 billion opportunity here in the Bahamas. And so again, with purpose, we can become the leaders in this new frontier.
Wow. Oh, So much to cover. You mentioned talking about the trees being cut down and replanted. I came across a video, but I couldn't obviously include that in the interest of time in the show. But one of the things that it talked about in this clip is that, we like to say, oh, just plant more trees, but that is not the solution, because
No.
there is so much more effective what's the word I'm looking for, when nature's allowed to develop on its own, as opposed to you just planting a whole bunch of the same types of trees. You don't get the same type of return that you do when it happens naturally.
Just think that you have a tree 10-year-old, you cut it down and plant a new one. It takes decades for that to come back again. So we have to preserve and expand our footprint in that type of environment. And so stop clear cutting land. Let's cut what we need for building. And we need something called biophilic. We need to begin to look at making our cities biophilic. Biophilic is basically a green city from smart energy, smart consumption, and plant life on our buildings, in our buildings, and around, and the clean air. We need to preserve and protect the Garden of Eden that God has granted us. And we can do it at the same time, reboot, rebuild, redefine our economy.
Wow. Thank you so much, C. Allen. Graham argues that it's not for a lack of knowledge. Maybe it's just a lack of will.
Yeah, you know what it is? Let me just end to say this. We need men and women that possess both the testicular fortitude and the ovarian audacity to go against the grain. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Ah, boy. How long we've been hearing that? Anyway, wow. This has been really fascinating. I hope that our audience gathered sufficient information from this show that to help them to further understand or better understand this whole question of carbon credits. I know that I learned a lot, certainly in preparation for today's show, as well as during this conversation. And it boils down to the same problem that we have with other challenges that this nation faces. And I like the way C. Allen put it, testicular fortitude and ovarian audacity. And that's what we need, because we all know what needs to be done. We just need the people with the kahunas to do it. C. Allen, 1 minute, final thoughts.
Bahamas, again, this is one of the many opportunities that we have. Let's just not talk about it. Let's get in the game. Let's begin to agitate and call your members of parliament and agitate your leadership, both PLP, FNM, and the third forces, to simply say, let's have a succinct conversation on how global warming and climate change is affecting us. Let's preserve and build up our islands. And let's see the resources we have to expand our exclusive economic zones greater than. Let's expand economic zone right into Walmart, so we'll be able to say we can to Walmart to shop in our zone. So thank you so much, Bahamas, and study, and we can continue our conversation again on this. Thank you so much again, Michelle.
Thank you, C. Allen, so much for agreeing to be here, to be on the show today, and for helping to break this down for us so that we can understand it better. And as always, I'll be calling on you again in the future, I'm sure. So thanks so much for always agreeing. All right, so that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you guys so much. Tomorrow is Wellness Wednesday. And you know what? Seeing that the slap that was heard and seen around the world has garnered so much attention, I have decided that tomorrow's show is going to focus on alopecia, which is the condition that causes people to go bald. This is the condition that Jada Pinkett Smith has, that caused Chris Fox to receive a slap that was heard around the world. Because he dared to tell a joke about Will Smith's wife, and she was clearly hurt by it because she has been very public with her struggle with alopecia. But guess what, y'all? Women right here in the Bahamas, we're going to have one on the show tomorrow who has alopecia, and we're going to talk about it. So that's on our Wellness Wednesday show tomorrow. Don't you dare miss it. I'm Michelle Malcolm. Thank you so much for being a part of GPS today. I'll see you guys. Have a good one.
Global 99.5 FM reminds our listeners